Welcome back. Coinology. The story of the 1981 1-cent coin, commonly known as the Lincoln penny, is far deeper, richer, and more fascinating than many collectors or casual observers might initially believe. At first glance, a penny seems like the most ordinary coin in the United States. It's the coin that people often dismiss, the one that falls under couch cushions or lies forgotten in parking lots, the one children put into piggy banks without considering its history, weight, design, or potential hidden value. Yet within the fabric of U.S. coinage, the 1981 penny holds a unique place, standing as a final chapter of one important era while also serving as a bridge into a new chapter of American coin history. To understand its importance, one must step back into the timeline of American currency and recognize the powerful story that this tiny copper piece carries. The year 1981 was significant because it was the very last full year in which United States pennies were struck in their traditional composition, which had been used for many decades, 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. These coins weighed 3.11 grams each and carried with them a sense of authenticity, durability, and connection to a long American legacy. After 1981, beginning in the middle of 1982, the U.S. Mint transitioned to a different composition due to rising copper prices. Instead of solid copper, the pennies began to be produced with a mostly zinc core, coated with a thin plating of copper, drastically reducing their intrinsic metal value and altering their feel, weight, and long-term resilience. This makes the 1981 penny the last of the true copper pennies, and collectors today recognize that importance when determining its desirability and value. Examining the design of the coin, one sees the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909, when the centennial of Lincoln's birth was commemorated. Brenner's design had endured for decades, becoming one of the most recognizable coin images in the world. On the obverse, or front, of the coin, Lincoln faces right, with the word liberty to his left, the year of issue 1981 to his right, and above his head the powerful national motto, "In God We Trust." This simple yet powerful arrangement symbolizes the guiding principles of America: liberty, faith, leadership, and the resilience of democracy. The reverse of the 1981 penny showcases the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., designed by Frank Gasparo, who at that time was chief engraver of the United States Mint. This depiction of the Lincoln Memorial is significant not only for its representation of one of the nation's most iconic monuments but also because if one looks closely, even with the naked eye, the seated figure of Abraham Lincoln can be seen within the central section of the memorial, making it one of the very few U.S. coins to depict the same person on both sides. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, below it the denomination spelled out as 1 cent, and arching across the top of the structure, the national motto E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one. Every detail of this coin's design connects to a larger story of American history, values, and artistic representation. Now, when considering the 1981 penny in terms of its value, the journey becomes even more intriguing. While many people believe a penny is worth only its face value, just 1 cent, numismatists, or coin collectors, know that certain dates, mint marks, errors, and conditions can elevate the value of a coin beyond imagination. In fact, in recent years, collectors have pursued rare varieties and exceptional condition 1981 pennies, with some claims suggesting extraordinary market prices reaching into the millions for unique specimens. In particular, the mythology surrounding special or error 1981 cents has fueled speculation and excitement, with some circulated stories even pointing toward values as high as hundreds of millions of dollars, especially when attached to high-grade or historically significant examples. The current market talk places one particularly extraordinary specimen at an unbelievable $290 million, making it one of the most sought-after and mythologized coins in the collecting world. While such figures may sound unbelievable, they demonstrate the level of passion, demand, and mystery that surrounds coins like the 1981 penny. Beyond the numbers, one must also consider the historical and cultural backdrop of this coin. The early 1980s was a time of change in America. The country was transitioning economically, with inflation, shifting metal values, and the need to adjust coin compositions driving decisions at the mint. Collectors today look back at the 1981 penny as a reminder of that era when copper prices soared, making it more expensive to mint a penny than the coin's actual face value. The government had to adapt, leading to the monumental 1982 change that permanently altered the identity of the U.S. cent. Thus, the 1981 issue, in all its varieties and mint marks, represents the very last consistent run of the classic copper penny, a farewell to an era of coinage that had defined the 20th century. Looking at the specifics, the 1981 penny was struck at 3 main mint facilities: Philadelphia, which in that year did not carry a mint mark; Denver, which bears a small D mint mark below the date; and San Francisco, which produced proof coins with the S mint mark. Each of these has its own production numbers, characteristics, and desirability among collectors. Philadelphia produced massive quantities for circulation, and while most of these are common, certain pristine examples can command high prices. Denver also produced a high volume, with similar results, ordinary in worn condition but extraordinary in mint state. San Francisco proofs, struck with specially polished dies and blanks to create mirror-like finishes, are especially desirable among collectors and can be worth substantial sums when preserved in flawless condition. Within these categories, error coins, such as those with doubled dies, off-center strikes, or other minting mistakes, can be astronomically valuable, as error coins are one-of-a-kind artifacts that slip through the strict quality control of the mint. Collectors crave such rarities, and the stories of 1981 errors fetching astronomical prices are a key reason why some attach mythic values to these coins. As for the weight, the 1981 penny, at 3.11 grams, is heavier than modern zinc-based cents, which weigh only 2.5 grams. This difference may not seem significant at first, but to collectors and numismatists, it is crucial. The weight confirms the composition and authenticity of the coin. A genuine 1981 copper penny feels slightly denser and more substantial in hand compared to the lightweight zinc pennies that followed. Over time, copper pennies also age differently. They develop a rich patina, with deep brown or reddish hues, adding character and uniqueness to each specimen. This distinct look and feel is part of the appeal, and anyone who has held both types of pennies can instantly tell the difference. When considering the potential of a single 1981 penny being worth $290 million, one must think beyond ordinary circulation coins. Such valuation typically arises in cases where a coin is tied to extreme rarity, unique historical context, or an error so dramatic that it becomes legendary in numismatic history. Imagine a 1981 penny struck on the wrong planchet, or a proof coin with a rare variation, or a specimen preserved in absolutely flawless condition since the day it was minted, surviving decades without a single scratch or blemish. These are the kinds of circumstances that elevate a coin from pocket change to a treasure of unimaginable worth. And within the world of collecting, the narrative behind the coin often becomes just as important as the coin itself. The story of discovery, the mystery of its survival, the aura of its rarity, all these contribute to its market value and its mythological status, and so, the 1981 penny becomes not just a coin, but a portal into a world where history, art, economics, and human passion collide. It is the story of Lincoln's enduring image, of Brenner and Gasparo's designs, of the U.S. Mint's struggles with rising copper prices, and of collectors' unending pursuit of perfection and rarity. To hold a 1981 penny is to hold a piece of American history, one that connects the past to the present in ways that few other objects can. Whether it lies in a change jar or within a high-security vault, its significance cannot be underestimated. The fascination with the 1981 penny cannot be fully appreciated without diving into the culture of coin collecting itself, because the way collectors view and assign value to coins is unlike anything in other markets. While many objects depreciate with age, coins can appreciate drastically, not only because of rarity but because of condition, desirability, and historical significance. The penny has been the most produced coin in American history, yet despite billions being struck, certain examples rise above the ordinary. The 1981 penny, being the last of the pre-1982 copper series, is instantly marked as special, because collectors know it represents the end of an age. In every collectible field, the last of something often becomes as prized as the first, and with coins, that truth rings especially strong. People remember that after 1981, pennies were forever different, lighter, cheaper to produce, and not nearly as durable. The 1981 coin, therefore, holds a kind of dignity, the final copper warrior of a century-long era. Think about what makes this coin remarkable in terms of physicality. When you pick up a 1981 copper cent, there is weight to it, a density that feels substantial in your hand, unlike the hollow feeling of a post-1982 zinc coin. The sound is different too. If you drop a copper penny on a hard surface, it rings with a sharp, metallic clarity, whereas a zinc penny lands with a dull, almost hollow thud. Collectors use this difference as a quick test when separating copper pennies from zinc ones. This subtle but meaningful distinction is what anchors the 1981 cent in the hearts of those who appreciate tangible history. It is not just a coin, it is a sensory experience. Another important point to consider is the variety of mint marks. The Philadelphia Mint in 1981 did not carry a mint mark, which is a tradition stretching back for decades. Denver pennies carried the D mark, and San Francisco pennies carried the S mark. But within those categories, there are nuances. Proof coins struck in San Francisco were produced with extraordinary care, polished dies, and smooth planchets to achieve mirror-like surfaces. Some of these proof pennies show what collectors call a cameo effect, where the design appears frosted while the fields of the coin are reflective like a mirror. Deep cameo proofs, in particular, are highly sought after, and a flawless example graded at the highest level can command incredible prices at auction. This is not just speculation. The market has demonstrated again and again that collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums for perfection. It is also important to note that during this time, the mint was experimenting with different processes and quality control, which meant that minor varieties and minting quirks appeared. Collectors have identified subtle doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and other varieties on the 1981 penny that make them stand out. Each variety, when confirmed, adds a new layer to the story of the coin, because it shows how even in an age of modern machinery, imperfections slip through, creating unique specimens. For collectors, these errors are treasures, because they represent the unpredictable human and mechanical side of coin production. No two are exactly alike, and the more dramatic the error, the more valuable the coin becomes. When we look at the marketplace, stories often emerge of rare coins selling for unbelievable sums. Some skeptics wonder how a penny could ever be worth millions, let alone hundreds of millions. But when you look at the rare coin market as a whole, there are many precedents. Coins that once were pocket change have sold for tens of millions of dollars at auction. The 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle, a $20 gold piece, sold for nearly $19 million in 2021. The 1794 Flowing Hair Silver Dollar, the very first silver dollar struck by the United States, sold for over $10 million. If such astronomical values can be placed on coins that were once everyday money, then the idea of a unique or extraordinary 1981 penny commanding hundreds of millions does not seem entirely impossible, especially in a market where rarity, story, and condition combine into something priceless. The $290 million valuation tied to a particular 1981 penny is rooted in this world of passion, myth, and collector psychology. Such a figure represents the idea that the coin is not merely copper in design, but history, symbolism, and rarity distilled into a single object. If one specimen is deemed the finest known, or tied to a unique story, perhaps struck under extraordinary circumstances or preserved in a way no other example has been, then the market could push its value beyond reason. Collectors often compete fiercely for Pop 1 coins, meaning there is only one example at the highest grade. If the 1981 penny has such a status, then its mythical valuation begins to make sense. The narrative of Lincoln's portrait on the coin also adds to its power. Abraham Lincoln was the first historical figure to be depicted on a regular circulating American coin when his profile appeared on the cent in 1909. His presence on the penny ties the coin directly to the nation's most revered president, a man associated with freedom, unity, and moral leadership. That connection elevates the coin's symbolism. Collectors are not just holding a piece of copper, they are holding a tribute to Lincoln's enduring legacy. The fact that his image remained virtually unchanged for decades further strengthens the continuity and importance of the design. In 1981, when people held pennies in their hands, they were also holding a reminder of the Civil War, emancipation, and the preservation of the Union. The reverse design of the Lincoln Memorial deepens this symbolism. The monument is not only a national treasure but a living symbol of Lincoln's impact. Millions of Americans and tourists visit the memorial every year, walking up its steps to gaze upon the giant seated figure of Lincoln. On the 1981 penny, this monument becomes portable, carried in pockets across the nation, spreading Lincoln's presence into everyday life. The tiny detail of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial is one of the most fascinating aspects of the design, because it is a hidden feature. Many people never notice it, yet it connects the coin in a subtle way to the deeper artistry behind it. Coins like the 1981 cent remind us that money is not just about value, it is about art, symbolism, and national identity. The importance of copper itself cannot be overlooked when discussing this coin. Copper has been used for centuries in coinage due to its durability, resistance to corrosion, and pleasing appearance. The decision to remove copper from pennies in 1982 was not made lightly. Rising prices of copper meant that the cost of producing each penny was approaching, and sometimes exceeding, its actual face value. From an economic perspective, this was unsustainable. But for collectors, the 1981 penny represents the last of the era when copper still dominated the cent. It is a coin of substance, a coin that feels as though it belongs to a different time. Many collectors now actively sort through rolls of pennies, pulling out the pre-1982 copper coins because of their intrinsic value and their potential future appreciation. Among those, the 1981 pennies are always kept with special care, because they are the last consistent issue before the Great Change. Consider the way this coin bridges generations. Older collectors remember using copper pennies in their childhood, filling Whitman coin albums with cents from the 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s. Younger collectors, who have grown up mostly with zinc cents, look back at the 1981 issue as a link to the older tradition. The coin thus becomes a point of unity, connecting different ages of collectors and reminding everyone that history is not as distant as it sometimes seems. And when we imagine the idea of a 1981 penny commanding a market value of $290 million, it becomes more than just a number. It becomes a symbol of how much people value history, rarity, and the pursuit of perfection. It shows that a coin can rise from obscurity to legendary status, simply because of what it represents. It is easy to dismiss a penny as worthless, but in the right context, with the right story and condition, that penny can become a treasure worth more than the most luxurious mansion, the rarest painting, or even a fleet of luxury cars. This is the magic of numismatics, the transformation of the ordinary into the extraordinary, the elevation of everyday objects into priceless artifacts. The enduring appeal of the 1981 penny is also tied to the sheer numbers produced and the paradox of rarity within abundance. At first glance, one might assume that because billions of pennies were minted in 1981, none could ever be rare or valuable. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 7.4 billion cents, while the Denver Mint struck over 5.3 billion, and the San Francisco Mint produced over 4 million proof coins. These are staggering figures, and in sheer volume, the 1981 penny is anything but scarce. Yet numismatics has always taught that rarity is not only about how many coins were made but also about how many survive in top condition, with unique characteristics, or with special qualities that set them apart from the mass. Among billions, a handful can stand out as extraordinary, and it is those few that command the attention of serious collectors and investors. Think of it this way: billions of people have photographs of Abraham Lincoln in books or online, but the original Matthew Brady photograph of Lincoln is priceless. Billions of copies of the Mona Lisa exist, but the original painting in the Louvre is beyond value. Coins follow the same principle. Ordinary 1981 pennies will always be common and circulate with little notice, but the finest, rarest, or most unusual examples take on legendary status. It is this transformation that creates stories of coins worth hundreds of millions of dollars. One of the aspects that makes 1981 cents particularly fascinating is the presence of transitional varieties that hint at the Great Change of 1982. Because the mint was preparing for the switch from copper to zinc, there were experiments, test strikes, and variations in planchets around this period. Collectors often speculate that there could exist 1981 pennies struck on experimental planchets or struck under unusual conditions, and if discovered, such coins would be worth a fortune. This adds an aura of mystery to every 1981 cent, the possibility, however slim, that a particular coin could be something extraordinary. It drives people to search through their change, their jars, and their boxes of pennies, hoping to find that one specimen that rewrites the value of what was once considered pocket change. The grading of coins plays a central role in determining value, and for the 1981 penny, this is no different. The grading scale ranges from poor, barely recognizable coins at the lowest level, to mint state gems at the highest. Professional grading services, such as PCGS and NGC, examine coins under magnification, assessing their luster, strike, surface preservation, and overall eye appeal. A common 1981 penny in worn condition may be worth only a cent, but a flawless mint state coin graded MS67 or higher can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. For proof coins, the scale extends into PR70, the absolute perfect grade. A deep cameo 1981S proof penny graded PR70 DCAM is a true rarity, and collectors pay enormous premiums for such perfection. The chase for the highest grade drives competition, because in the world of numismatics, the difference between a grade of MS66 and MS67 can mean a jump in value from tens of dollars to thousands. At the very top, with Pop 1 coins, the only example graded at that level, the value can skyrocket into the millions. Another important factor is the aesthetic beauty of the coin itself. Collectors are not only concerned with technical grades but also with toning, the natural coloration that develops on coins over time due to exposure to air and the environment. A 1981 penny with vibrant rainbow toning, showing shades of blue, purple, gold, and red, can be far more valuable than an ordinary example, because tone coins are unique works of art created by nature. Some collectors specialize exclusively in toned coins, paying enormous sums for coins with spectacular color. A single 1981 cent with exceptional toning could become the centerpiece of a collection and command a price far beyond what its grade alone might suggest. This adds yet another layer of fascination and potential to the 1981 penny. When discussing the possibility of a 1981 cent being valued at $290 million, it is worth imagining the story such a coin would carry. Perhaps it is a unique error, such as a double denomination strike where a penny was struck over a dime, creating a bizarre and priceless hybrid. Perhaps it is a coin struck on the wrong metal planchet, such as a rare leftover bronze or silver blank. Perhaps it is a proof penny with a dramatic minting anomaly that no other coin possesses. Or perhaps it is the single finest known example, graded at a level no other coin has achieved, making it a one-of-a-kind treasure. Whatever the reason, the story behind such a coin would be just as valuable as the coin itself, because collectors are not only buying the metal, they are buying history, rarity, and the right to own something no one else on earth possesses. The 1981 penny also reflects the broader economic climate of its time. The early 1980s were a period of inflation, fluctuating commodity prices, and shifting government policies. Copper prices were soaring, and the mint faced the difficult decision of whether to continue producing cents at a loss or to change their composition. This was not just an economic issue but a political one, because the penny holds sentimental value in American culture. There were debates about whether to eliminate the cent altogether, as some argued it cost more to produce than it was worth. Ultimately, the decision was to keep the penny but reduce its cost through a new zinc composition. In this context, the 1981 cent stands as the last penny struck in the old tradition, before economic realities forced a permanent change. This historical backdrop gives the coin an additional layer of meaning, making it a symbol of transition and resilience. The mythology of coins worth unimaginable sums is also a reflection of human imagination and desire. People are naturally drawn to stories of hidden treasures, of ordinary objects turning out to be priceless. The 1981 penny embodies this dream. Somewhere, perhaps in a box of old coins in an attic, perhaps in circulation, perhaps already in a private collection, there could exist a penny worth not just a few dollars, but hundreds of millions. The very possibility fuels excitement, encourages searches, and keeps the legend alive. It transforms the penny from an overlooked coin into a symbol of hope and discovery. Collectors often describe their passion as a journey, and the 1981 penny plays an important role in that journey. For some, it is the coin that sparks their interest in numismatics. A child might notice that a 1981 penny looks different, feels heavier, or has an unusual tone, and that curiosity leads to research, which in turn leads to a lifetime of collecting. For others, it is the coin that completes a set, filling the last slot in a Lincoln cent album and giving a sense of accomplishment. And for the most dedicated, it is a coin that represents the endless pursuit of perfection, the chase for the finest known example, the thrill of competing with other collectors at auctions where fortunes are spent in seconds. The global appeal of the 1981 penny should not be overlooked either. While it is an American coin, collectors around the world are fascinated by U.S. currency, particularly the Lincoln cent. In Europe, Asia, and beyond, numismatists seek out 1981 pennies to add to their collections, drawn by the coin's historical significance and the universal respect for Abraham Lincoln. The fact that this coin is tied to the last year of full copper composition makes it even more desirable internationally, where it is often seen as a classic piece of Americana. The worldwide demand further elevates the potential value of extraordinary examples, as wealthy collectors from around the globe compete for ownership. The role of auction houses in creating legendary coin values cannot be ignored. When a unique or exceptional 1981 penny comes to market, it is often the auction house that sets the stage, promoting the coin with elaborate catalogs, stunning photographs, and detailed historical research. The anticipation builds, collectors prepare their bids, and when the auction begins, the excitement is palpable. Prices soar, driven not only by the rarity of the coin but by the prestige of ownership. Winning such a coin is not just about money, it is about pride, legacy, and making history. And when the hammer falls at an astronomical figure, the story of the coin enters numismatic legend, inspiring new generations of collectors and fueling dreams of hidden treasures. The 1981 penny also carries with it an element of nostalgia that transcends the boundaries of numismatics. For many Americans, pennies from the late 1970s and early 1980s remind them of childhood, of receiving change from a candy store, of dropping coins into arcade machines, of filling small jars with copper cents that seem to accumulate endlessly. The weight, the color, and even the faint metallic smell of a copper penny carry memories that are deeply personal. When collectors hold a 1981 penny today, they are not just holding currency, they are holding a piece of their own past. This emotional connection plays a subtle but powerful role in why certain coins rise in value. Nostalgia, combined with rarity and history, is a potent force in shaping the market. It is also worth reflecting on the broader cultural symbolism of the penny itself. The phrase "a penny saved is a penny earned," attributed to Benjamin Franklin, highlights the role of the penny in American life as a symbol of thrift and financial responsibility. Even though the coin's purchasing power has diminished dramatically over the decades, its cultural presence remains strong. Campaigns to eliminate the penny have faced fierce opposition, not just from those with practical concerns but from those who view the coin as a piece of heritage. The 1981 penny, with its classic copper composition and traditional design, embodies the very essence of that heritage. To lose the penny would be, for many, to lose a piece of American identity, and that makes coins like the 1981 cent all the more treasured. One cannot discuss the penny without also mentioning the countless ways it has been used beyond spending. People have collected them in jars, crafted them into jewelry, used them for good luck charms, or placed them on railroad tracks to watch them flatten under the wheels of passing trains. Pennies have been pressed into elongated souvenirs at amusement parks, embedded in epoxy for countertops, and even tossed into fountains as wishes. The 1981 penny has surely played these roles in the lives of countless individuals. Yet among all those ordinary stories, a handful of extraordinary coins remain, preserved in mint condition, waiting for discovery. And those rare few are the ones that elevate the entire year's production into legend. The fascination with error coins adds another dimension to the 1981 penny. Imagine a coin struck off-center, with part of the design missing, or a double strike that shows two overlapping images of Lincoln's portrait. Such errors are highly collectible, because they are unique artifacts of the minting process gone awry. They remind us that even in a highly controlled system, perfection is not always achieved, and mistakes can create treasures. Some of the most valuable coins in history are errors, and if a dramatic error were discovered on a 1981 cent, its value could be astronomical. It could be the very coin that explains how a penny could be valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, because error coins are, by definition, one of a kind. Consider also the role of storytelling in coin collecting. A coin is more than metal, it is a story encapsulated in copper and design. The 1981 penny's story is rich, the last of the full copper cents, minted during a time of economic change, bearing the likeness of Lincoln, connecting two eras of American history, and existing in numbers so vast yet hiding rare treasures within. When a coin is linked to a compelling story, collectors value it even more, because ownership becomes a way of participating in that story. The legendary $290 million valuation attached to the 1981 penny is fueled not just by the coin's rarity or condition but by the narrative that surrounds it. In numismatics, stories often drive prices as much as the physical coins themselves. The design elements of the 1981 penny also deserve a deeper appreciation. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln has often been praised for its artistry and dignity. Unlike many coin designs that have come and gone, Brenner's portrait has endured for over a century with only minor adjustments. This speaks to its power and timelessness. The way Lincoln's profile is engraved conveys strength, humility, and vision qualities that defined his presidency. Brenner's initials, VDB, famously appeared on the original 1909 cents and were later restored in smaller form on the coin, a subtle nod to the artist's legacy. In 1981, collectors holding the penny were part of a design tradition stretching back more than 70 years. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959, offered a fitting tribute to the man on the obverse. The balance of obverse and reverse, the unity of portrait and monument, created a harmony that resonated with millions. When coins carry such artistic integrity, their appeal is enhanced, both emotionally and financially. The global context of 1981 also adds meaning to the penny. The United States was asserting its influence on the world stage during the final years of the Cold War. At home, Americans were grappling with inflation and recession, while abroad, tensions defined international relations. Within this climate, the penny was a quiet constant, a small copper coin that circulated in billions, carrying the face of Lincoln into every corner of the nation. The fact that such a simple object could embody so much history, both national and personal, makes the 1981 cent far more than pocket change. It is a symbol of stability during turbulent times, and this symbolic power elevates its importance in the eyes of collectors. From a purely physical perspective, the copper of the 1981 penny has its own allure. Copper is a noble metal, rich in color and historically tied to human progress. Civilizations for millennia have used copper for tools, art, and currency. Its reddish hue is warm and inviting, and its durability ensures that coins last for generations. The 1981 penny represents the final era when copper was still affordable enough to be used for the nation's smallest denomination. Afterward, the shift to zinc represented not only an economic decision but a loss of tradition. To collectors, the 1981 cent therefore holds intrinsic appeal, because it is tied to copper's long and honorable role in coinage. Imagine the journey of a single 1981 penny over the decades. Freshly struck at the mint, its surface is gleaming, it is released into circulation, perhaps going first into a cashier's till. From there, it changes hands countless times, slipped into vending machines, handed to children as allowance, dropped into tip jars, carried in wallets, lost and found again. Along the way, it collects tiny scratches, dings, and patina, each marking a moment in its life story. For most, this journey ends in obscurity, the penny eventually worn down and forgotten. But for a select few, perhaps preserved by chance in a drawer or collected by someone who noticed its brilliance, the journey is different. These are the coins that survive in pristine condition, defying time, and it is these coins that collectors hunt for with unrelenting passion. When we hear of a 1981 penny valued at $290 million, it may sound mythical, but in a way, it is the culmination of all these factors: rarity, history, condition, symbolism, storytelling, nostalgia, and the human drive to find treasure. The coin becomes a mirror reflecting not only the history of America but the desires of those who chase perfection and meaning in objects that others overlook. The idea that something so small, so ordinary, could carry such weight is a reminder of how value was created not just by economics but by human imagination and collective belief, and so the 1981 penny lives on, not merely as currency but as legend. Its role in numismatic history is secure, and its story continues to inspire collectors, dreamers, and treasure hunters alike. Each time someone examines a penny from that year, there is the spark of possibility, the question whispered in the back of the mind: could this be the one? Could this be the coin that changes everything? That question, more than anything else, is what keeps the legend alive. The conversation about the 1981 penny also invites us to think about the deeper relationship between coins and time. A coin is not just an object of metal, it is a witness to the era in which it was born. Every 1981 penny that still exists today has lived through decades of change, silently traveling through pockets, drawers, and piggy banks while history unfolded around it. When these coins were minted, Ronald Reagan had just taken office as President of the United States, MTV had recently debuted, and the first space shuttle flights were capturing the world's imagination. The Cold War loomed in the background, the economy was shifting dramatically, and technology was beginning to accelerate in ways people could hardly imagine. The penny minted in 1981 carries all of that context with it, because it is a relic of that very moment in time, frozen in copper. For collectors, that connection adds depth. Owning a 1981 penny is like holding a tangible piece of the early 1980s, a physical bridge between the past and the present. The economic story of the 1981 penny is particularly fascinating because it represents the precise moment when commodity values and minting costs collided. Copper had been the primary ingredient of pennies for generations, but by the late 1970s and early 1980s, the price of copper on the global market was rising rapidly. The US Mint calculated that producing a penny was costing nearly as much as, and sometimes more than, its face value. This created what many viewed as an absurd situation: a coin worth 1 cent was costing more than 1 cent to manufacture. The 1981 penny, therefore, was among the last to carry that hidden value. Each cent contained nearly 3 cents worth of copper at certain points in history. This paradox became part of the legend of copper pennies, fueling hoarding and speculation. People began stockpiling jars, bags, and rolls of pre-1982 pennies, knowing that the intrinsic value of their metal might one day surpass their face value permanently. The 1981 penny became one of the most hoarded of all, because it was the last reliable year before the composition changed. This hoarding has affected the survival of the coin in interesting ways. While billions were minted, many have since been set aside by ordinary citizens and collectors alike. Some of those hoards may one day be melted down for their copper if laws ever change, but in the meantime, they serve as a vast reservoir of potential treasure hunters sifting through coins in search of the rarest examples. The possibility of stumbling across a high-grade, uncirculated, or error 1981 penny fuels this activity. Coin roll hunting, where enthusiasts purchase rolls of pennies from banks and search them for treasures, has become a popular hobby, and the 1981 penny is one of the key targets. It is not uncommon for collectors to find copper cents among modern zinc coins, and each discovery feels like uncovering a tiny time capsule. The coin's weight of 3.11 grams may seem like a minor detail, but it is essential in differentiating genuine copper pennies from the lighter zinc ones that followed. Enthusiasts often use small digital scales to sort through their collections, setting aside the heavier copper coins as they go. The difference of 0.61 grams may sound small, but in the world of numismatics, it is crucial. A scale can quickly reveal whether a coin belongs to the pre-1982 era, and for 1981 pennies, that weight affirms their place as the last of their kind. Some collectors describe the heavier weight as more satisfying, giving the coin a presence that modern zinc cents lack. It is one of those subtle but meaningful details that deepens the appreciation for the coin. Another layer of interest lies in the artistry of coinage itself. Coins like the 1981 cent are not only tools of commerce but miniature works of sculpture, mass-produced yet carrying artistic integrity. Brenner's portrait of Lincoln is a study in subtlety, with fine details in the hair, beard, and expression that speak to Lincoln's character. Over decades of striking, dies wear down, and small differences emerge between coins. This has led collectors to study 1981 cents in great detail, searching for doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and other varieties that can elevate the value of an otherwise ordinary cent. Even a small doubling on Lincoln's eye or a slight shift in the mint mark can make a coin dramatically more valuable. The thrill of discovery lies in these subtleties, and 1981 pennies offer ample opportunity for such finds. The San Francisco proof issues of 1981 are especially treasured. These coins were never meant for circulation, they were produced for collectors, struck multiple times with polished dies and specially prepared planchets to ensure mirror-like surfaces. The artistry of these proofs is breathtaking when preserved properly. A deep cameo proof, where Lincoln's portrait appears frosted against a dark mirror background, has an almost jewel-like quality. To hold such a coin is to see the penny not as ordinary change but as a piece of numismatic art. Proof's graded PR70 Deep Cameo, representing absolute perfection, can achieve staggering values because collectors will pay virtually any price for flawless examples. The difference between a proof-graded PR69 and PR70 may be invisible to the casual eye but is monumental in the marketplace. This pursuit of perfection is one of the driving forces behind high valuations. When examining why a 1981 penny could reach a valuation of $290 million, it is important to recognize the role of myth and legend in the coin world. Legendary coins often become symbols not only of wealth but of dreams. The very idea that a humble cent could be worth more than the world's most luxurious yacht or the most famous painting sparks the imagination. It encourages people to look more closely at their coins, to search for hidden treasure, and to dream that perhaps they, too, could uncover something extraordinary. In this way, the legend of the 1981 penny has a life of its own, independent of its actual market transactions. It exists in the collective imagination of collectors, dreamers, and treasure hunters across the world. Auction houses and media also play a role in amplifying these legends. When stories circulate of coins selling for astronomical sums, it fuels interest and speculation. A 1981 penny said to be worth hundreds of millions instantly captures headlines, spreading far beyond the numismatic community. Such stories create buzz, draw new collectors into the hobby, and elevate the status of the coin itself. Even those who do not fully believe in the valuation cannot resist the allure of the tale. In this way, the coin becomes both a tangible artifact and a mythological symbol, existing simultaneously in the marketplace and in the imagination. The Lincoln Cent series as a whole has always attracted passionate collectors, and the 1981 penny is a cornerstone of that series. Since its introduction in 1909, the Lincoln Cent has been one of the most beloved coins in America. Generations of collectors began their numismatic journeys with a Lincoln Cent album, filling each slot year by year, mint by mint. The 1981 penny marks the end of the long copper era within that beloved series, giving it special weight. For many, completing a Lincoln Cent collection feels incomplete without a pristine 1981, because it is the last representative of a tradition stretching back to the early 20th century. The legend of the 1981 penny also ties into the broader human fascination with hidden value. People love the idea that something ordinary could secretly be extraordinary. It is the same impulse that drives treasure hunters to search for lost artifacts, or art enthusiasts to dream of discovering a forgotten masterpiece in an attic. The penny, being so common, is the perfect vessel for this dream. To think that the smallest denomination, often ignored or discarded, could hold unimaginable value is irresistible. The 1981 penny embodies this paradox perfectly: common yet potentially priceless, overlooked yet legendary. The presence of Abraham Lincoln on the coin only deepens this appeal. Lincoln is one of the most revered figures in American history, and his image carries moral and historical weight. To have him on the nation's most humble coin reflects the idea that greatness can be found in the smallest things. The 1981 penny, bearing his likeness in copper for the last time before the transition to zinc, becomes a fitting tribute to Lincoln's legacy of resilience and humility. Collectors are not just valuing the coin as metal but as a symbolic link to one of the nation's greatest leaders, and so, when the story is told of a 1981 penny being worth $290 million, it becomes more than a financial tale. It becomes a parable about value, history, and imagination. It reminds us that coins are not just tools of commerce but carriers of culture, art, and dreams. The 1981 penny, small and humble though it may be, stands as a giant in the world of numismatics, inspiring awe, curiosity, and passion in all who encounter it. The journey of the 1981 penny cannot be separated from the way people interact with coins in daily life, because what makes a penny magical is that it is both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Every American has likely held hundreds, if not thousands, of 1981 pennies without thinking twice, slipping them into vending machines, tossing them into change jars, or watching them disappear at the bottom of couches and cars. Yet among those billions of pennies lies the possibility of a hidden rarity, a coin struck in perfect condition, or an error specimen that transforms it from pocket change into a piece of history worth a fortune. This dual identity is what gives coins like the 1981 penny their legendary status, because they blur the line between the everyday and the priceless. When you look at the details of the coin, every aspect tells a story. The date 1981 stamped on the obverse does more than identify its year of minting, it situates the coin in a very specific historical and cultural moment. That date becomes a marker of the world as it was in that year, a tiny engraving of time itself. Lincoln's portrait, designed decades earlier by Victor David Brenner, remains timeless, but the date grounds it in reality. Collectors examine the numerals carefully, looking for variations such as doubling, repunched digits, or unusual spacing that can elevate the value dramatically. Even something as small as the thickness of the number 1 and the date can be the difference between a common cent and a highly prized variety. This level of detail reflects how numismatics transforms a simple coin into an object of endless fascination. The 1981 penny also represents the end of an era because it was the last year of full copper production before the switch in 1982. The difference is profound when you consider the scale. For decades, pennies had been produced from an alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, and that formula gave them their distinct weight, feel, and even sound when dropped on a surface. After 1982, the composition changed to a zinc core with a thin copper coating, making the coins lighter, cheaper to produce, but less durable. Collectors can literally feel the difference when comparing a 1981 penny to a later one, and this tangible shift in material is part of what makes the 1981 so iconic. It is not just another penny, it is the last breath of a long copper tradition that defined American coinage for generations. The symbolism of copper itself should not be overlooked. Copper is one of the oldest metals used by humankind, with a history stretching back thousands of years. It has always been associated with durability, conductivity, and value. Ancient civilizations valued copper for its malleability and longevity, and it became a foundation for currency in many cultures. To have the American 1-cent coin crafted from copper for so long carried that weight of history forward. The transition away from copper in 1982 was not just a change in metal but a symbolic shift in how the nation valued its currency. The 1981 penny thus becomes the last connection to that ancient tradition, the final copper link in a chain stretching back centuries. For the numismatic community, errors and varieties are a central focus of fascination with the 1981 penny. Double die obverse, where Lincoln's features or the date appear doubled, are some of the most sought-after varieties. Even minor doubling, visible only under magnification, can skyrocket the value. Repunched mint marks, where the mint worker had to strike the mint mark more than once, creating a shadow effect, are also highly collectible. Each mint that produced 1981 pennies, Philadelphia with no mint mark, Denver with the D, and San Francisco with the S, adds its own quirks, and collectors hunt tirelessly for the rarest combinations. The San Francisco proofs, with their mirror fields and frosted devices, stand apart entirely, especially when preserved in top condition. Finding one of these with no flaws, no scratches, and strong cameo contrast is like striking gold, and prices reflect that rarity. The grading of coins is another element that transforms the 1981 penny from pocket change into a fortune. Most 1981 pennies in circulation are worn, bearing the scratches, dings, and discolorations of decades of use. These are worth little more than their copper content. But when a coin has been preserved in mint state, especially at grades MS67 or higher, the story changes dramatically. Such coins are exceedingly rare, because it is difficult for any coin to remain pristine through minting, packaging, and handling. Professional grading services like PCGS or NGC evaluate coins under intense scrutiny, and a single tiny imperfection can lower the grade. That is why the few 1981 pennies that achieve top grades command extraordinary prices. The jump in value between MS66 and MS67, for example, can be thousands of dollars, and at the very top, the sky's the limit. The idea that a 1981 penny could be worth $290 million may seem surreal, but in the numismatic world, extreme valuations are not just about the coin itself, they are about what it represents. Such a valuation speaks to rarity, demand, historical significance, and the mythic power of collecting. Coins become symbols of dreams, investments, and even status. Just as a painting by a master can fetch hundreds of millions not because of the canvas and paint but because of its cultural meaning, a coin can reach astronomical values because it embodies history, rarity, and human imagination. A legendary coin is never just metal, it is a story, and stories have limitless value in the right context. When one considers how coins circulate, another layer of mystery emerges. A 1981 penny today could have traveled the world. It might have been carried in a soldier's pocket, dropped in a subway station, or tucked into a child's piggy bank. Each coin has a silent biography, unknown but endlessly fascinating. The thought that one of those coins might turn out to be the legendary multi-million-dollar specimen adds an almost magical quality to the search. It is not unlike the idea of a lottery ticket, but instead of buying a chance, people sift through the coins they already own, discovering that treasure might already be in their possession. This democratizes the hunt, making it accessible to anyone with curiosity and patience. For everyday collectors, the 1981 penny is also a way to connect across generations. Parents pass coin collections to their children, and one of the first lessons is often about the difference between copper and zinc pennies. A child learning to weigh coins, to look for the date, to recognize mint marks, is taking their first steps into numismatics through the 1981 cent. That simple act of discovery, the realization that not all pennies are the same, is a rite of passage in the hobby. The 1981 penny, therefore, is not only a coin but a teaching tool, a gateway into a lifelong passion for history and collecting. As the decades pass, the legend of the 1981 penny continues to grow. Each time a story emerges about a rare example fetching a staggering price, it renews the excitement. People rummage through their coin jars, check the bottoms of drawers, and inspect their pocket change more carefully. In this way, the 1981 penny keeps alive a sense of adventure and wonder in an age where so much of life has become digital and intangible. A coin is solid, real, and enduring, and the possibility of extraordinary value hidden in the ordinary gives people a reason to keep looking, to keep hoping, to keep dreaming. The tale of the 1981 penny becomes even richer when we consider how it embodies the intersection of economics, history, and culture in a way few other objects can. On the surface, it is a tiny copper disc worth a cent, easily overlooked, but beneath that simplicity lies a story that spans centuries and speaks to the human desire to give meaning to objects. Every time someone picks up a 1981 penny and inspects it, they are not just looking at metal, they are encountering a relic of a particular era in the United States, one shaped by shifting politics, changing industries, and evolving cultural symbols. To fully appreciate why the 1981 penny is legendary, one has to view it as both artifact and idea, simultaneously practical currency and piece of art. Think of the obverse, where Abraham Lincoln's face appears in profile. That portrait, designed by Victor David Brenner, had already graced the penny for more than 7 decades by the time 1981 rolled around. The longevity of that design speaks volumes about how Lincoln is perceived in the American psyche. His likeness represents honesty, unity, and sacrifice, and placing it on the smallest unit of currency carries a message of humility, that greatness can be honored not only on grand monuments but on the coin most likely to be passed from hand to hand. For collectors, the fact that 1981 is the last full copper issue underlines this connection even further. It was almost as though the era of heavy, substantial pennies deserved to close with Lincoln still at the forefront, his calm and resolute image reminding people of the endurance of American ideals. Flip the coin, and the reverse design also tells a story. The image of the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, creates a sense of symmetry: Lincoln on the front, his memorial on the back. By 1981, Americans had grown accustomed to this design, yet it carried a quiet dignity. Collectors love the small detail that, when magnified, even the seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial is visible, a subtle tribute to the man enshrined within. It is this kind of intricate detail that transforms a simple penny into a miniature monument, and in high-grade 1981 examples, those details stand out sharply, further increasing their allure. Another layer of fascination comes from the sheer scale of 1981 penny production. Billions of these coins rolled off the presses at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. Each one may look identical at a glance, but differences in strike quality, die wear, and minting conditions mean that no two are precisely alike. Among billions, only a tiny fraction emerge flawless, and that is where the hunt begins. The rarity of perfection in such a massive mintage adds to the mystique. It is almost like searching for a flawless diamond in a mountain of stones. The thrill lies in knowing it exists but that it must be discovered. Collectors also appreciate the physical qualities of the 1981 penny. At 3.11 grams, it has a satisfying heft compared to modern zinc coins. Drop it on a hard surface, and the sound is distinct, a resonant ring instead of the dull clink of zinc. Even the color is richer, with copper developing deep, attractive tones as it ages, ranging from bright red to brown, sometimes with iridescent hues under the right lighting. High-grade examples that retain their original red designation, meaning they still shine with the color they had the day they left the mint, are especially prized. Over time, copper reacts with the environment, toning naturally, and that process gives each coin a unique personality. For collectors, the beauty of a 1981 penny in pristine condition is not just in its rarity but in its artistry. When we talk about astronomical values, like $290 million, we are also talking about the psychology of collecting. Value in numismatics is driven not only by rarity but by desire. A single wealthy collector or institution willing to pay a record-breaking price can redefine the entire market for a coin. Once the story of such a sale enters the public domain, it takes on a life of its own, inspiring others to dream of finding or owning the same treasure. This is how legends are born. Even if only one example of a 1981 penny has ever achieved such a stratospheric price, the ripple effect ensures that the entire year's issue becomes legendary, fueling interest among new collectors and treasure hunters alike. But the story of the 1981 penny also resonates because it speaks to fairness and opportunity. Unlike rare gold coins struck in limited numbers for the wealthy, pennies are democratic. They belong to everyone. A 1981 penny could be found in your pocket change, lying on the street, or buried in the cushions of your couch. The possibility that such a humble coin could hold life-changing value captures the imagination like little else. It is a reminder that treasure does not always come in glittering, obvious forms. It can hide in plain sight, in something as small and ordinary as a cent. The idea of copper itself adds another poetic dimension. Copper is a conductor of electricity, and in many ways, one could say the 1981 penny conducts history. It carries energy from one generation to the next, a thread of continuity linking the past to the present. Think of all the hands a single penny might have passed through in 40-plus years: workers, children, travelers, families. Each person added a tiny piece of their story to the coin's journey, and yet it remains, unchanged in form, carrying all those unseen stories within it. When someone finally recognizes it as rare or valuable, they are not just discovering metal, they are uncovering a biography hidden in plain sight. The fascination with the 1981 penny also reflects the human instinct to preserve. Collecting coins is an act of resistance against time, a way to hold onto objects that might otherwise vanish. Every time someone sets aside a 1981 penny in a protective holder or album, they are declaring that this piece of history matters, that it deserves to be remembered. In a world where money increasingly exists as numbers on a screen, the physicality of coins like the 1981 cent becomes even more precious. It is tangible, weighty, enduring qualities that cannot be digitized or erased. The fact that people assign immense value to such an object speaks not only to economics but to human emotion. And finally, the story of the 1981 penny is a story about hope. Whether it is a young collector just starting out, a seasoned numismatist searching for perfection, or an ordinary person checking their pocket change, the 1981 penny offers a reason to believe that extraordinary things can hide within the ordinary. It proves that history is never too far away, that value can surprise us, and that sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest significance. That is why, even after 4 decades, the 1981 penny continues to captivate imaginations and command attention in ways that defy its humble denomination. The story of the 1981 penny grows even more powerful when we place it against the backdrop of the early 1980s, because coins are always more than objects, they are reflections of their time. In 1981, America was stepping into a new decade marked by shifting politics, changing economic policies, and a rising sense of global tension. Ronald Reagan had just taken the oath of office, the country was wrestling with high inflation, and debates about the nation's financial future filled the headlines. Against that backdrop, a coin as small as the penny became symbolic in ways people didn't always recognize. The humble cent was both a tool of everyday life and a reminder of the economic forces that shaped the country. The decision to continue minting full copper pennies in 1981, even as production costs soared, was more than a technical choice, it was a reflection of the struggle between tradition and practicality. That struggle is etched into every 1981 penny, making it a witness to the turning of an economic tide. To hold one of these coins is to hold that transition in your hand. It is not simply about copper versus zinc, it is about the deeper question of value itself. What does it mean for money to cost more to make than it is worth? What does it mean to carry forward traditions, even when they become impractical? The 1981 penny captures these questions in metal form, embodying the tension between symbolism and economy, between history and progress. This duality is one reason collectors find it so fascinating. It is not just a coin, it is a conversation starter, a symbol of choices made at the highest levels of government and the ripple effects those choices had on everyday life. The artistry of the coin itself only adds to its appeal. Brenner's portrait of Lincoln, first introduced in 1909, continues to inspire admiration for its simplicity and dignity. The lines of Lincoln's face convey wisdom and perseverance, qualities that resonate deeply with the American public. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial adds an architectural balance, reminding everyone of the enduring impact of one man's leadership. The symmetry of design, Lincoln's face on one side, his memorial on the other, creates a powerful narrative within a tiny piece of copper. In pristine 1981 examples, those details are razor-sharp, every line in Lincoln's hair visible, every column of the memorial crisp and well-defined. That is why condition matters so much, because only in the highest grades does the full artistry shine through. In the vast production of 1981 pennies, errors and anomalies became inevitable, and it is these mistakes that excite collectors the most. A double die obverse, or parts of Lincoln's face or the date appear duplicated, can instantly transform a penny from common to rare. Repunched mint marks, die cracks, off-center strikes, and other minting quirks all add to the allure. Each error tells its own story about the minting process, about the human and mechanical imperfections that sneak into the pursuit of perfection. For collectors, these imperfections are not flaws but treasures, because they set a coin apart from the billions of others that look identical. The 1981 penny, with its massive mintage, is a playground for error hunters, and discoveries continue to be made even decades later. When we consider value, the discussion inevitably returns to rarity and demand. While billions were minted, only a fraction remain in exceptional condition. Copper is soft and prone to wear, meaning that pennies in circulation quickly lose their sharpness and luster. That is why uncirculated examples, preserved in protective holders since the moment of minting, are so rare and desirable. Proof coins struck at the San Francisco Mint add another level of beauty, with their mirror-like fields and frosted details. A deep cameo 1981 proof, perfectly preserved, can mesmerize anyone who sees it. In the coin world, perfection is everything, and the few 1981 examples that achieve the highest possible grades are worth far more than anyone might imagine for a penny. The astronomical figure of $290 million attached to the 1981 penny is not just about metal and minting, it is about mythology. Legendary values emerge when coins capture the imagination of collectors, investors, and the public. Stories spread of record-breaking sales, and suddenly the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Even those who have never studied coins begin to dream of finding a fortune in their change. That dream keeps the legend alive, fueling a cycle of fascination that grows stronger with each retelling. The idea that a coin worth 1 cent could be valued at hundreds of millions speaks to the power of belief, scarcity, and storytelling. In this sense, the 1981 penny is not just a numismatic treasure, it is a cultural phenomenon. The fact that pennies are accessible to everyone makes this legend even more compelling. Unlike rare gold or silver coins, which were often minted in small numbers and intended for wealthy collectors, pennies belong to everyone. Children collect them, families save them in jars, and banks distribute them by the roll. The possibility that one of those pennies could be a life-changing discovery turns the ordinary into a potential adventure. It gives people a reason to look more closely at the coins they handle every day, to wonder whether treasure might be hiding in plain sight. This accessibility democratizes the legend of the 1981 penny, making it a coin of the people in more ways than one. The symbolism of Lincoln himself also magnifies the coin's impact. Lincoln's life story is one of perseverance, rising from humble beginnings to lead a nation through its most trying period. To have his portrait on the most humble denomination, and to see that denomination become a subject of immense fascination, feels fitting. It reflects the idea that greatness and value can emerge from modest places. The 1981 penny, with its deep copper shine and its legendary reputation, becomes not just a tribute to Lincoln but a continuation of his message that even the smallest things can carry immense significance. As we look at the journey of the 1981 penny, from minting presses to collectors' vaults, from pocket change to auction blocks, we see more than the story of a coin. We see the story of human imagination, of how value is created not just by metal but by meaning. Coins are history made tangible, and the 1981 penny is one of the most compelling examples of that truth. Its weight of 3.11 grams carries more than copper, it carries memory, culture, art, and hope. That is why, decades after its production, it continues to inspire collectors and dreamers alike. The 1981 penny continues to spark wonder not only because of what it is but because of what it represents in the larger story of coins and collecting. A penny is supposed to be the most ordinary piece of currency, the one people hardly notice when it jingles in their pockets or when it ends up forgotten in the corner of a drawer. Yet the 1981 penny defies that expectation by carrying extraordinary layers of meaning, turning the smallest coin into one of the most talked about pieces in modern numismatics. When we hold a 1981 penny, we are not just holding copper, we are holding a bridge between generations, a marker of economic history, and for some, the possibility of unimaginable fortune. Consider the journey of a single 1981 penny. It begins at the mint, struck with precision under the weight of massive presses, sent into circulation by the billions. From there, its path could lead anywhere, to a grocery store till, a child's piggy bank, a jar on a kitchen counter, or a bank vault. Over the decades, it may have changed hands hundreds or even thousands of times. It may have traveled across cities, states, even countries, all the while carrying its date and design intact. Every scratch, every worn edge tells a story of its passage through time. Yet among those billions, one coin might escape the wear of circulation, preserved by chance in pristine condition, waiting decades until someone recognizes its value. That story, of survival, chance, and recognition, is what elevates the 1981 penny into legend. The economics of the coin deepen that legend further. At its core, the 1981 penny is a copper artifact produced in a time when copper prices were rising so quickly that minting cents was becoming unsustainable. This reality created a paradox. The coin's face value was 1 cent, but its metal content was worth more than that in raw copper. This meant that the coin carried hidden value even as it passed for its tiny denomination. People realized this and began hoarding pre-1982 pennies in bulk, setting aside rolls and bags for the day when melting them might become legal. This act of hoarding, done by ordinary citizens, gave the 1981 penny an additional layer of significance. It was not just a coin but a commodity, a store of potential value waiting for the future. In the world of collecting, details matter, and the 1981 penny offers plenty to study. The weight of 3.11 grams, the reddish glow of copper, the subtle shifts in color as it ages, all contribute to its identity. Mint marks provide another layer of interest. Philadelphia, producing pennies without a mint mark, created the largest share. Denver, marked with a D, added its own massive numbers. San Francisco, marked with an S, struck proofs with polished dies and mirror-like fields, made not for circulation but for collectors who wanted the finest examples. Each mint's output carries its own story, and the search for flawless examples from each has become a lifelong pursuit for some enthusiasts. The San Francisco proofs in particular show what the penny can look like at its very best, shimmering like a gemstone, every detail sharp and intentional, proof that even a humble cent can rival works of art when crafted with carry errors from 1981 add further excitement to the hunt. A double die obverse, where Lincoln's features or the date appear slightly duplicated, can turn a penny into a rare treasure. Off-center strikes, die breaks, and repunched mint marks each represent the human and mechanical imperfections of the minting process, tiny anomalies that transform ordinary coins into collectors' prizes. These varieties remind us that coins are mass-produced objects, yet in that vast repetition, uniqueness emerges. Collectors cherish these differences because they make each coin a singular piece of history rather than just one of billions. The astronomical figure of $290 million attached to the 1981 penny highlights how myth and reality intersect in numismatics. While only a handful of coins in history have commanded such values, the very possibility creates a powerful narrative. It suggests that even something as humble as a cent can, under the right circumstances, become a cultural icon worth more than almost anything else on earth. Stories of legendary sales travel fast, inspiring countless people to check their change, to dig out old jars of coins, to hope that they too might stumble upon hidden treasure. That dream, the dream that fortune could be found in the smallest and most ordinary object, is what gives the 1981 penny its magnetic power. The role of professional grading adds another layer to this story. Services like PCGS and NGC have built entire industries around certifying coins, assigning them grades based on strike quality, surface preservation, and eye appeal. For a 1981 penny, the difference between MS66 and MS67 can mean the difference between a coin worth a modest amount and one worth thousands. At the very top levels, where perfection is nearly impossible, values explode. Proof coins graded PR70 Deep Cameo represent an almost unattainable ideal, a flawless strike preserved perfectly since the day it was minted. These top-graded coins embody the pursuit of perfection in collecting, and for those who own them, the value is not only monetary but emotional. To hold perfection in hand, especially in such a common denomination, feels like holding lightning in a bottle. Beyond economics and collecting, the 1981 penny holds cultural meaning. It reminds us of a time when coins were part of daily life in a way they are less so now. Today, digital payments dominate, and coins often pile up unused, but in 1981, cash and change were central to every transaction. A penny mattered, and millions of them flowed through the economy every day. The survival of these pennies into the modern era makes them artifacts of a time before technology reshaped commerce. They carry the texture of that world in their surfaces, the scratches and wear of countless exchanges in grocery stores, diners, and gas stations. To collectors, that history is priceless. The symbolism of Lincoln's image strengthens the legend. Lincoln's journey from a log cabin to the presidency resonates with the penny's own story, from the smallest denomination to a coin that could be worth millions. It feels poetic that his face graces this coin, a reminder that greatness often comes from humble beginnings. The 1981 penny, the last of the full copper issues, becomes a fitting tribute to Lincoln's enduring message of resilience, hope, and value found in unexpected places. Collectors do not just see copper, they see history, leadership, and symbolism all compressed into a coin barely larger than a thumbnail. This combination of history, art, error, rarity, and legend is what makes the 1981 penny such a compelling subject. It is not merely about money, it is about meaning. To some, it is a relic of their childhood, a coin they remember receiving in change at a corner store. To others, it is a piece of economic history, the last copper cent before the world shifted to cheaper materials. To still others, it is a potential fortune, the dream of finding a legendary coin worth more than entire corporations. That layering of meanings is why the story never dies, why even decades later the 1981 penny continues to capture attention and imagination, and perhaps most importantly, the penny embodies hope. It whispers that treasures may hide where we least expect them, that greatness may lie in the smallest corners of our lives. In that sense, the 1981 penny is more than a collectible, it is a symbol of possibility, a tiny copper beacon reminding us to look more closely at the world around us. The 1981 penny stands today not simply as a coin, not simply as copper pressed into a circle, but as a living fragment of American memory. It is the last full year before the nation turned the page and moved its most common denomination away from tradition and into the age of cheaper alloys. When you hold it in your hand, you are holding the close of an era, the final breath of a chapter that began when the Lincoln cent first appeared in 1909 and carried forward through decades of history. You are holding the echoes of a nation grappling with inflation, of people wondering about the value of money, of children saving change in piggy banks, of families rolling cents into paper sleeves, of clerks giving back exact coins across counters that have long since disappeared. The 1981 penny carries all of that with it. Silently but powerfully, think about what it means for such a tiny object, barely more than a gram of copper, to stir so much fascination, to inspire conversations, to drive collectors to spend lifetimes searching for the most perfect examples, to become the centerpiece of stories that span the globe. It reminds us that value is not only measured in dollars or in the weight of precious metal. Value is measured in meaning, in memory, in the way an object touches our imagination. That is why this coin, which began its life worth only a cent, has been spoken of in the same breath as figures that staggered the imagination: hundreds of millions of dollars, enough to purchase palaces, fleets of cars, or entire companies. Whether or not any single coin ever truly realizes that astronomical price, the story itself gives it power. The legend itself becomes the treasure. When we talk about the $290 million value attached to the 1981 penny, we are not only speaking of money, we are speaking of myth. A myth that says the smallest things can carry the largest dreams. A myth that says treasure might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a little bit of luck to discover it. Myths like these are what keep the world of coins alive. They make people dig into old jars of change, search through rolls from banks, peer at the tiny details of mint marks and dates under magnifying glasses, hoping for that one in a billion discovery. The 1981 penny has become more than a coin, it has become a spark, igniting curiosity in young and old alike, binding people together across time and space through a shared fascination with history and possibility. The design itself reinforces this sense of enduring meaning. On one side, Abraham Lincoln gazes outward, his portrait captured with dignity and patience, a reminder of the struggles and triumphs that defined his life and leadership. On the other side, the Lincoln Memorial stretches with perfect symmetry, columns representing not just architecture but endurance, stability, and memory. Between these two images, the coin creates a complete story, one of a man who rose from humble beginnings to change the course of history, and a nation that enshrined his memory in marble and bronze. The penny is therefore not just a tool of commerce but a storytelling device, a reminder pressed into copper that the smallest object can still carry the weight of greatness. The 1981 penny also carries within it the universal truth of time. Time changes everything. The bright red luster of copper darkens as decades pass. Surfaces scratch, edges dull, but still the date remains, still the portrait of Lincoln holds firm, still the memory of its creation lives on. Some pennies survive nearly untouched, their details as crisp as the day they left the press, preserved by chance or by care. Others bear the marks of countless exchanges, worn nearly smooth, yet no less a part of the story. Each penny, whether flawless or battered, carries time with it. Each penny tells us that even the smallest things can endure, that memory itself can be preserved in the simplest of objects, and so, as we reach the end of the story, we return to the heart of the matter. The 1981 penny is not just a coin, not just copper, not just a collectible. It is a symbol. It symbolizes tradition, it symbolizes change, it symbolizes the dreams people place in the objects they hold. It tells us that greatness can emerge from humble places, that legends can grow from the smallest beginnings, that hope can be found in something as ordinary as a cent. The astronomical values attached to it are part of that legend, but the deeper value is the meaning we give it, the way it connects us to history, to art, to memory, to possibility. So the next time you see a penny, especially one from 1981, take a moment to look closely. See the portrait of Lincoln, see the memorial, feel the weight of copper in your hand, and remember the story it tells. It may be small, it may seem ordinary, but within it lies a universe of history and hope. Within it lies the possibility of unimaginable value. Within it lies the reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are found in the most ordinary places. That is the magic of the 1981 penny. That is why it is worth not just money, not just millions, not just hundreds of millions. It is worth remembering. It is worth cherishing. It is worth dreaming about. Because in the end, the true value of the 1981 penny is not only in auctions or in price guides. The true value is in the story it tells and the dream it inspires. And that is something no number can ever fully capture.